Welcome back behind the velvet rope. Let's just get right into it today because we are joined by the one, the only Dave Neal.
How are you?
I should say from the Rush Hour with Dave Neal podcast. Let's just give a shout out at the top of the show. And
I
I've been on your
appreciate that.
podcast.
Absolutely. It's good to be behind the velvet rope with you. I feel so exclusive.
Well, welcome. Everyone can listen to me on your podcast if they haven't already. What is before we get into Bravo, because we got a lot of Bravo to talk about. Just give us the top line, like what's going. I'm not in Bachelor Nation. I've dipped my toes in. Like all I know is what, like Jenn Tran, the Bachelorette, just got engaged and then she got unengaged and she got a text, and that's how she found out. Am I
It was
wrong?
no, it was a really boring season until the last like 30 minutes of the final episode. And it might not even sound as crazy to explain it, but she proposed. It was supposed to be this iconic moment where she proposed to the guy. And before they aired the proposal, that Jesse Palmer was like, "Look, we need to discuss what happened." And then in front of the live audience, she shares the fact that he dumped her. And then they made her watch the proposal with him next to her, and they had her sobbing, and it literally, people were like, "Oh my gosh, this is abusive, this is crazy." And it just created like a social media moment where everyone was talking about it, and still is, because it was pretty wild. But it's really not rare. 4% of the relationships work out on the show. Someone's going to break up with somebody. It was almost like people had their red flags up about this guy, and it all paid off all at once, and people were like, "Oh, I told you so." Now, Jen was replacing, she was like the third choice for the season. They wanted this girl named Daisy. Actually, Good Morning America accidentally spoiled that it was going to be Daisy. And then, they had to fire their Facebook guy because that was wrong. And then it was supposed to be Maria. And then finally it was Jen. And then because the season went so sideways, so last minute, 45 minutes like after the show finished airing Tuesday night, they offered her a spot on Dancing with the Stars, and she had to take a red eye flight like within an hour to New York to interview on Good Morning America. So it's been a whirlwind week for her.
Why was it? Because I watched that season with Joey. Like, why was it like what happened? Like Daisy didn't want it. Then what, right? Didn't Daisy not want to be the
Yeah,
bachelorette?
Daisy's dating this guy named Thor, and he's the grandson of like a oil gas station billionaire, and they're just like living their life. And this is what happens where if it's like if you're single, you go, yeah, sure, I'll go on it. But if you're like starting to date someone, you have to go, all right, I got to break up with this guy to go on. It's not like you're going on Survivor. You have to break up with somebody. So I think she just chose the relationship, and they're still together.
And I mean, I'm all for breaking up with someone, but not when they're like an oil tycoon billionaire. Like Daisy Girl, you could whatever you can get from the Bachelorette, it's not going to be as good as that.
And you know what they realized is it used to be like 3, 4, 5 years ago, especially during the pandemic, you would get 1 million followers by being the lead. And they're just not seeing that now. Jenn Tran's probably at 300,000. And so Maria Georges was also in the running, and she's fantastic. She's just like a one in a lifetime character. She was on a Call Her Daddy podcast. She's taking off. She goes, "You know what? I don't want it. I'm good. I'm all set." And she spent the last 5 months living her life, doing a social media tour, hanging out. And I got to tell you, it was kind of the right decision. The audience can be so toxic that if you don't have to go on the show, you just go like, all right, I don't need it. I don't need to deal with this, because Maria had to deal with, the villain edit, and was like, I don't need the pressure of all of this. You get paid 100 grand to be the lead, maybe 150. But then when you're the lead, they have a 2-year contract. So you might have someone like Taco Bell saying, "Hey, we want to pay you $80,000 to promote our chalupa." And then the bachelor goes, "No, no, we're not going to do that." So they can like hold on to you longer. And I think in the social media age, it's just like delays the amount of money you can make on your own.
Interesting. I didn't know all of that. I know the finances and how it works on Bravo. I didn't realize, I mean, I love Maria. I get it. Like I'm a huge Maria person. I didn't realize she actually turned it down. That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and so she goes on Call Her Daddy podcast, the Joe Rogan of this world, and she's like, "Yeah, I turned it down. It was mine. We were, picking out wardrobe and filming promos." And after she said that, Jenn Tran saw that interview and unfollowed her, or she unfollowed Jenn Tran. Either way, they got into a beef, because Jen, when it's like they made it look like she was third place, and the honest truth is she was. People can argue about this till they're blue in the face. People got mad at me over this, but she wasn't the first choice. She wasn't the second choice. She was the third choice. And that's just, that happens on seasons. And for Jenn Tran to go into her season, all the men were cast for Daisy or Maria. And on the show, on that season, they even talked about it. Like, yeah, we thought it was going to be Daisy or Maria. Those were the two options they thought it would be. So they were surprised it was Jen. And, like the show, the relationships never work out anyway. But, you'd like to think if they're casting for a specific type, maybe they have a better shot. And, it didn't work out. The big bombshell on the finale was that Jenn Tran exposed her ex Devin and said, not only did you dump me, but the next day you followed Maria on Instagram. And that took off because, they're doing this in front of a live audience, and the live audiences, their jaws are dropping. They're like, oh, how could you follow the other girl? And it just becomes a whole thing.
Watch, he'll start dating Maria now.
So then she makes a TikTok, which I'm going to be covering today, saying, I don't like the guy. I'm not in charge of who follows me. I'm not following him back. So she kind of distanced herself from him, being like, just because he followed me doesn't mean he can hang with me. So you get through the Bachelor world, you get these parasocial relationships where every single person's commenting on it. It's a he said, it's a she said. And on the show, so much drama happens from when they propose, which is usually 3 or 4 months ago, to when the finale airs. And you have to sort of piece together what happened in this like dark time where they weren't on camera. So there's still a lot of questions about how toxic the relationship was, and was it all his fault, or what else could have gone down. You've had past seasons where couples like kind of break up and then they'll kiss somebody else, but they're not supposed to be seen in public, so it's considered cheating. And it's kind of like we hold them to like an expectation we would never hold, I think, anyone in the real world.
I love someone who turns down a reality show. So now I love Maria even more.
Oh, it's a gangster move. Because it's like, look, you don't pay enough. It's like Tyler Cameron, he's big in the Bravo world. I always see he's on Watch What Happens Live. He's like, they can't pay me enough. $100,000. No, he's part of the glory age of social media. It was in the millions of followers. You'd have to pay him well over $1 million to want to do it, because the only thing that can happen is his image can get tarnished, because people get real defensive and triggered when they see relationships not work out, even though we've all been in relationships in real life that don't work out. We've all been the villain. And I always have to remind people that we all have the opportunity to have a bad day and be the villain in someone else's story. And they don't forget when it's on TV.
Well, I am the villain in a lot of people's stories if it makes everyone listening feel any better. And I mean, do we have a new villain now in the Bravo world? I mean, what is going on? So we have Jax and Brittany are separating. You watched the first season of The Valley.
Yeah, so what's interesting about me is I started watching Vanderpump only after Scandival, like a lot of people. So I've slowly learned of characters of past seasons, and I'll hear the sort of the archetype of who they are, and then I'll watch it play out. So yeah, Valley was, I mean, season one, it felt like every relationship was holding on by a thread. That's how it felt the whole season. It was very stressful to watch with my wife.
I mean, that's the great thing about Vanderpump of why it was so successful for all those years. It's because it's like you couldn't script this. Like, you had like a Jax and a Stassi, and then like he cheated. It's like it was so intertwined. He cheated with Kristen, and then like Kristen was with